So yesterday, when Donald Trump lied, as we already stated, Donald Trump lied about President Obama calling family members or not calling family members. That struck a particular nerve with San Antonio Spurs coach Gregg Popovich, who has been outspoken about his opposition to President Trump, particularly in the mannerisms and the way that Donald Trump carries himself. There's plenty of video that you can go and check to see what Gregg Popovich thinks of Donald Trump. But yesterday, his words went to a new level. And I think it's appropriate, it's an appropriate level to match the absurdity of what Donald Trump did yesterday in his accusations against previous presidents with regard to the families of the fallen. And there's a quote that I want to bring up on your screen. It was in an interview in thenation.com. Gregg Popovich had this to say, quote, "This man in the Oval Office is a soulless coward who thinks that he can only become large by belittling others. This has, of course, been a common practice of his, but to do it in this manner and to lie about how previous presidents responded to the deaths of soldiers is as low as it gets. We have a pathological liar in the White House, unfit intellectually, emotionally, and psychologically to hold this office, and the whole world knows it, especially those around him every day. The people who work with this president should be ashamed because they know better than anyone else just how unfit he is, and yet they choose to do nothing about it. This is their shame most of all." If I was on my radio show, I would play an applause track because this is spot on. We'll talk about the faux controversy. People are trying to get upset that Gregg Popovich is speaking in this manner. We could speak about that momentarily. But the substance of what he said, I think Gregg Popovich has struck to the core of the issue. Everyone knows that Donald Trump is unfit to be president of the United States. Most of us knew that before the election, but now everyone who's looking knows. And so we have to ask ourselves this question. So what's worse, Donald Trump or the people who still enable Donald Trump, his supporters, his staff, people who are around him who understand the seriousness of their role and their place, not only in history, but in today, right now. Their jobs today are so vitally important, but yet and still they say nothing. They say nothing about Donald Trump because they feel like they have to have some loyalty to people serving Donald Trump took an oath to protect and defend the United States from the Constitution against threats, domestic and foreign. Emphasis on domestic. So Donald Trump is a threat to the United States. He's a threat to the Constitution of the United States. I mean, case in point, the entire fiasco with the NFL. Listen, I'm tired of talking about NFL players taking the knee, but when you have the president of the United States who insists that they cannot do that, he is directly contradicting his oath to defend the Constitution by violating the Constitution and infringing on their First Amendment rights. I mean, it's very simple. It's not rocket science. And so while we may not feel like talking about these issues anymore, the president of the United States is directly damaging America on many fronts, not just on the culture war issues. I mean, take a look at how he sabotaged the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, with regard to North Korea. We had the opportunity to have back channel communications with North Korea to stave off the necessity of any type of armed conflict. And yet and still, Donald Trump, the president of the United States, took to Twitter to undermine the Secretary of State. He is undermining the Iranian nuclear deal, and he's putting us in a dangerous position, putting our allies in dangerous positions. And so it's not just the culture war issues that Donald Trump is dangerous on, it's national security that he is a problem on. He's a problem across the board. But again, I ask the question, who's more responsible? The people who are around him, who are enabling him because they want to be loyal to him, or Donald Trump, who we all knew going in was this type of character? Last but not least, his voters. At this point, anyone who could still stand that 38% that we showed you earlier in the show, anyone who still falls in that category must be relegated to the dregs of society. And I know a lot of people are like, well, you can't just say this about an entire swath of voters. But if you can actively look at who Donald Trump is and still support him, if you can look at his behavior and still condone it, if you can look at his policies or the lack thereof and still think that he is a successful president, then you are not qualified to be in the broader conversation. We absolutely must build coalitions that can push back against that 38% who are active, that 38% who goes out and vote, that 38% who are dispersed between enough swing states to actually be a threat. So strategically, we have our work cut out for us. But philosophically and morally, this group is so repugnant because they can manage to stand by Donald Trump still today, despite all of the issues that are with it. But despite the fact, if I can use Gregg Popovich's words, that he is a soulless coward, and everybody knows it.